All right. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Chair Anna Sexton, and I would like to welcome you to the June 28th, 2021 Neighborhood Advisory Committee virtual meeting. We will now call our meeting to order. The committee consists of 9 members, all appointed by the City Council with representation from specific community sectors. Members shall be residents of the city or the city's extraterritorial zoning jurisdiction and shall reflect the socioeconomic diversity of Asheville. The term of office is 3 years. This committee was established to advise the City Council on neighborhoods within the City of Asheville's zoning and planning jurisdiction. The committee shall have the following powers and duties. 1, develop rules and bylaws for the conduct of its business, including but not limited to meeting schedules, officers, voting, and subcommittees. 2, develop a plan to strengthen neighborhood identity and resilience and to facilitate communication and cooperation between Asheville's neighborhoods and city offices. 3, develop benchmarks and standards by which progress towards implementing the plan can be measured. And 4, work on special projects that are consistent with the goals of the committee as assigned or directed by City Council. All committee members and city staff are participating virtually, and we appreciate your patience as we work through committee meetings a bit differently. We are streaming live on our Virtual Engagement Hub, which is accessible through the Virtual Engagement Hub link on the front page of the city website and is also linked on the Neighborhood Advisory Committee page. We also have an option for the public to listen live by phone by dialing 855-925-2801 and entering meeting code 9247. For those of you who plan to speak during our live public comment today, you will need to hit *3 to be put in the speaker queue. And for those of you out there with us today, welcome. I will now go through and introduce all committee members and staff who are participating virtually. And for committee members, please make sure to mute your microphone if you are not speaking. And when you have a question or would like to speak, click the raise hand icon, and when recognized, unmute your microphone. Please remember to mute your phone after you are done speaking and avoid communicating via the chat function. Committee members, as I call your name, please say a quick hello. Again, my name is Anna Sexton. I'm the Neighborhood Advisory Committee Chair, and I represent zip code 28806. Our Vice Chair, Bobette Mays, is not here today, but she represents, she's at-large member. So moving on to the next person in attendance, Peter Abzug.
Hello, I'm Peter Abzug. I'm also a representative at large.
Thanks, Peter. Greta Bush.
Hi, I'm Greta Bush. I am an at-large member.
Sharon Summerall.
Hi, I'm Sharon Summerall. I represent 28805.
Joe Fiacola.
I'm Joe Fiacola. I'm the secretary. I live in the 28801 neighborhood or zip code.
Pastor Spencer Hardaway is not here tonight either. This is the last meeting where he was serving out his full term, so we're sad to see him go. He was representing 28803, but just wanted to acknowledge him on our roster and say thank you to him for his service on the committee. Up next is Mike Wasmer.
Hi, my name is Mike Wasmer. I'm an at-large member.
And Wendy Hayner.
Hello, everyone. I'm Wendy Hayner, and I represent zip code 28804.
Great. And then I saw JP before the meeting went live today. He is our newest Neighborhood Advisory Committee member and begins his term in July. He will represent 28801. And JP, I'm not going to make you introduce yourself or anything like that, but just want to say hello and thank you for joining today. And you'll get a feel for how our meetings run, JP Trilarka. Our City Council liaison is Kim Roney. She is also unable to make it this evening, but we appreciate her dedication to following up with us and watching our archived meeting. And then also in attendance are city staff members, Brenda Mills.
Good evening.
And she's the staff liaison to NAC, and then Jeremy Lett as well.
Good evening, everyone.
He's the neighborhood services specialist with the city. All right. And then to start the committee agenda items, I'll note each section of our agenda aloud so that the audience can follow along. And just a reminder for committee members to please click the raise your hand icon and be recognized to speak. Please state your name each time you comment. And just a reminder that this helps folks who are listening in and may not be able to see on the screen what's happening. So, first off, I'll run through our agenda this evening, and we will go through the approval of our May meeting minutes. We'll do that first, and then I'll run through today's meeting agenda. So, has everyone had an opportunity to review the meeting minutes from our May 24th, 2021 NAC meeting? And if so, if there are no questions, I'll entertain a motion to approve those minutes. Go ahead, Wendy.
I will make a motion to approve the minutes as read.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
I'll second Sharon Summerall.
Thanks, Sharon. All right, so I'll go ahead and run through roll call in just a second, so I'll make sure I'm not missing anyone. Anna Sexton, go ahead and record for aye. Peter Abzug.
Aye.
Greta Bush.
Aye.
Sharon Summerall.
Aye.
Joe Fiacola.
Aye.
Mike Wasmer.
Aye.
And Wendy Hayner.
Aye.
Great, thank you. The motion carries. All right, so now I'll go through and review today's agenda. Today we have not received any public comments in advance of the meeting, but we will receive staff activities and updates from Brenda Mills. Our unfinished business is to review and hopefully adopt our NAC bylaw revisions and also the approval of our fiscal year 2022 work plan. We'll also discuss board and committee vacancies specific to NAC, and then receive an update on the Neighborhood Hero Working Group, as well as a staff presentation on the city's noise ordinance amendments. All right. We'll also receive updates from NAC members on other subcommittees, or excuse me, other committees that they serve on. So give me just a second here. My agenda went blank. And then we will also entertain live public comment at this meeting. So that will wrap up our June meeting. So with that said, we will move on to staff activities and updates from Brenda.
Thank you. Before I start, Joe Fiacola raised his hand.
Oh, thank you. Joe, please go ahead.
Yeah, the title of the agenda is Neighborhood Advisory Committee Retreat. I think that needs to just be Neighborhood Advisory Committee without retreat, because I think the retreat was 2 months ago.
I actually thought I took it off, but I must have grabbed an old copy. Thank you, Joe.
Good catch. Thanks, Joe.
Okay, so I have just two major updates. Number one, our boards and commissions are going back in person. In July, we will start with the quasi-judicial boards, Planning and Zoning, Historic Resources, Board of Adjustment. NAC will go back to in person in August. I'm still waiting to hear from the Development Services now, it oversees the Board of Adjustment. And I'm waiting to hear back from the liaison, Ricky Hurley. He's on vacation. I'm not sure if your meetings will be at 5 or 5:30, but I'll let you know as soon as we return back from the holidays. And so you'll be prepared for August, but we don't do that till August. So we got plenty of time. We did get approval for the neighborhood grants to be issued. Jeremy and I will be meeting this week. Then we'll be getting with our director and some other city staff to kind of talk about our procedures around that. And I'll have some updates for you guys in July. So a lot of neighborhoods are really anticipating it. We're really excited about it. Really just want to really think about it and what it means. And also, I attended Coalition of Asheville Neighborhoods meeting last Thursday to talk about keeping neighborhoods organized. It was really good because I had just met with Oakley midday for lunch. And one of the things that, we talked about is, if you all remember, I'm sure you don't, but we have 155 neighborhoods that are recognized in Asheville, and only about 50% of them are registered. And so really going to make some major efforts to look at encouraging people to register. And registration is not difficult. We don't require anything other than an application, that your boundaries don't intersect with other neighborhoods' boundaries. And but during that meeting, two of the neighborhoods that I didn't have contacts for, I now have contacts for. So that was good. So I want to encourage you as you can for the general meeting of Coalition of Asheville Neighborhoods. It'd be great to kind of check in there and see what they're doing. Sharon Summerall and Joe Fiacola, Wendy has attended, and Sharon and Joe serve as officers and work on committees. So it was a really good meeting. So that's mine.
Thanks, Brenda. Joe, I saw your hand. I'll acknowledge that in just a second. I have a quick question around the neighborhood grants. When those, I guess, sort of like the application process or procedures go out or are finalized, will they automatically be sent to registered neighborhood contacts, or is that something that you'll be looking to us to help get the word out for?
When I come back in July to give you a report on the process, I'll talk about that then. We're going to use everything from social media to Nextdoor to, I'm hoping that you guys, it'll be a great way for you guys to reach out to your respective regions about the neighborhood grants. And also we'll probably, more than likely, as we get them, because I don't think it's a one and done. I'm thinking people just apply all during the year until we don't have funding, or, I want to ask that question because people may not have anything right now, but they may have something later. So I don't want to rush people into asking for money when they don't need it right now. So we've got to make a lot of, decisions, and we don't want to make it difficult. I know with the racial healing grants, they use a Google form, and we're thinking about the same thing. Don't make it difficult. But we do need to decide if you're not a registered neighborhood. So that's something, we need to put in the work. So I'll be back to talk it through with you guys and get some approval from you guys. Thank you for the good question.
Thanks, Brenda. Joe, please go ahead.
Yeah, Brenda, I'm wondering where you got the number of 155 neighborhoods. I remember asking, a year and a half ago before COVID, what percentage of registered, of residential neighborhoods or residential properties were not in registered neighborhoods, organized neighborhoods. And I never got a response to that. And we've seen the map, and there's like 75 neighborhoods that cover most of the city. Can you tell me where the 155 number came from?
The 155 comes from Nextdoor. It records the, what is it? The ML, whatever that, I'm talking about the real estate term. It covers that. But all of the neighborhoods that are within the Asheville city limits are registered on Nextdoor. They have all of those officially. So that's kind of what I'll go from. And there's a name for all of them. So we've been reaching out to those folks as well. The information that you asked for I don't remember what time of year. I do remember that. And I want to say someone was working on it and I got it just as we went down for the downturn. So I will look that up and I'll get that to you in between now and the next meeting. And I can report on that at the next meeting as well.
Thank you.
Sharon, I see your hand as well. Please go ahead.
I don't know if this is the correct area to interject something or whether it should go into new business, but real quick, I attended the 3 reparations meetings, and I attended the budget meeting. And what I found from attending those 4 4 meetings is that we have some very unhappy neighborhoods, very unhappy. In fact, I was distressed to see how unhappy that some of our neighborhoods are. And they're unhappy over policing, increase in taxes, and what they're calling backroom dealings. And I'm wanting to open up a good line of communication with council and regarding these issues, and what if NAC is going to take a course of action to advise council and how I know this is going to be a long process, but we haven't been talking about it, and I kind of want to talk about it. So, and what can NAC offer to the larger group? And do we just add this to agenda items? And I know we're going to be meeting in future in person, and I think this will be easier discussions in person than it's going to be over Zoom. But I'm of the strong opinion that we need to discuss this somehow and coordinate. And I'm not sure how to do it so that we can advise council on what we think the neighborhood's appropriate response is. But I was personally distressed at how unhappy so many people are at this point in time in our neighborhoods. That's my take. I don't know if this is the right place for it or how we deal with it, but.
Are you signaling for me?
I was gonna say, do you wanna go ahead, or?
I will.
Okay.
We cannot discuss it tonight because we did not notice the discussion, but we definitely can put it on a future agenda item. And when you say distress, you've got to make a differentiation between, is it distress because of gentrification and those issues, or is it what's general to all neighborhoods? So it'd be great if you could give us that information.
You mean define distressed?
Well, you're saying you're surprised. I'm not surprised. I've heard
Of
all
course.
this stuff for years, but was it because of reparations and it really doesn't make a difference, I guess. The city itself will be dealing with this. There's more outreach going to be done. So I think you guys will have, if you want to, you can have a role in helping with the outreach that we do. I think that would be great. And we're going to be hearing more stories. The task force, I think we're within a couple of weeks of hiring an equity officer. So a lot of things are coming online, and you guys could certainly be a part of that.
Yeah, I think, I know of the inequities. I mean, that's obvious, but how much anger is what surprised me. And I think it's just a coalesced, we got to speak in public, and as opposed to being sequestered, and they were all together and the young people came out. And what I have not heard is people of my age group, or Brenda of your age group, talking about their feelings and what their neighborhood looks like at their age. I know how the younger people feel now, and the reparations was excellent. It was well done. And I believe we have a role somewhere in NAC. I just don't know how we have it. So I wanted to throw it out there, and I can work with Anna on how to get that on the agenda, and then you can advise on how that gets presented, I suppose, is what I'm looking for.
Okay, definitely.
Okay, thanks.
I think that's a great point. Brenda, I think my question would be, just from a staff perspective, being a little bit more plugged in and in the know, if we're looking at potentially adding items to future agendas or getting staff updates on various initiatives or new hirings. Like, what are some of the ways that you see potential agenda items forming for NAC, and how we could be best of service to the neighborhoods through that?
So this is Brenda again. You have a work plan. So that's the main way you're going to get agenda items. And then as you see a need, Anna, you and you, myself, and Bobette talked about You guys emphasized some stuff that you wanted some updates on. Of course, those will happen the next 3 months. And then if you would like to get information on what's happening with the reparations, you can always invite like either the chair or the staff liaison to come give updates about that. You'll get most of that. I think all of you should be getting neighborhood news. So updates will be in there. And then if you are not plugged into City E-News that comes out once a month, I think you should do that. And then, and then I'll just bring things to your attention that I think might be really good. Now, I'm going to say that the biggest one right now is the noise and development. So we're really trying to get a date for Chris Collins to come. We've got a little bit of a conflict on the 4th Monday. So we may have to have a meeting on a different Monday just so we can get him here. With us going back to in-person, he'll be in he's on the Black Mountain Planning Board. And we want to start having more discussions around really good work that he and the Development Services staff is doing around, neighborhood meetings around development, what his technical review does. Sharon knows, I think Anna knows, but a lot of you don't. And you're our voice in the community to kind of help people understand where to get that information. So does that help?
It does.
Okay.
Yeah. I think that is a great point to raise, just sort of to the larger neighborhood advisory committee to keep all of those things in mind. Brenda, Bobette, and I meet once a month to kind of talk through upcoming meetings, just play catch up with each other and think about what agenda items might be helpful to add to future meetings, but we can't do it alone. And we are only 3 voices for that. So any ideas that you all have as well, whether that be, at the end of our NAC meetings where the future agenda items sort of section comes up, or via email or phone call in between meetings, I think to all of us is helpful because it gives us an idea of where other folks' heads are at and sort of get plugged into maybe recurring themes and that sort of thing. So just want to throw that out there as well. Any other sort of discussion or questions around the staff updates before moving on? All right. So we will go into unfinished business now. And the first item is the NAC bylaw revision working group update. This is something where action is needed on this item, but first I will go ahead and turn it over to that working group to provide us all an update on the status of NAC bylaw revisions.
This is Joe Fiacola. We resubmitted the changes to the bylaws in a clean copy for people to look at over the last month, and I have heard nothing about any of the proposed changes. I don't know if there's any discussion now, if anybody's actually read them or not. I would like to move that we approve and adopt them as submitted.
I have a quick question. This is Greta.
Yeah.
Sorry, I've been traveling and having family visiting, so I haven't been on the ball, but I did want to ask about, let's see, I think it's Article 2, Section 1, NAC's purpose. I noticed that it didn't change, and I was just wondering if that is because I think there was some kind of whatever what's the word? The ordinance or whatever it was that made NAC become NAC wouldn't allow for that. But I had suggested that we could add on that NAC should include listening, educating, and helping develop and support neighborhoods as a communications conduit, because right now it seems that our only purpose is to advise City Council on neighborhoods. So a lot of the work that we do is more supporting neighborhoods, and it seems to me that that is outside of our purpose if we don't adjust that. So I was just wondering if that was something that wasn't able to be changed, or what was the rationale there?
This is Joe Fiacola. The actual language in our founding document is advise City Council on neighborhoods. The other things that you mentioned were fine, but they would have to be approved by City Council. So we would have to go and take a request of City Council, have them approve the change in our founding document. However, all of those things can be included in our goals to achieve the purpose of advising City Council on neighborhoods. And the goals are something that can change from year to year as long as they support our purpose. So that's why I did not change it. It would take a approval by City Council to change that language.
Okay, that's kind of what I thought, but in my opinion, those goals don't point to the purpose. If all we're doing is advising City Council on neighborhoods, then helping neighborhoods, become registered doesn't point to advising City Council. So I do think it would be worth it, just because I feel like it's important that all goals actually directly connect to the purpose, but it's up to other people too, what they think.
Thanks, Greta. I do see Sharon's hand raised, so Sharon, please go ahead.
I agree with Greta. I think it's worth taking it to council. I would like to hear it again and what she had to say, but she said it at our last meeting and I agreed with it. I like to see it written down, and I would like to see it go to council, because I agree with Greta. I think we can expand our goals and make them more concrete and put it in our bylaws.
I would argue against that, in that you want your bylaws to be generally supportive of the range of activities that you can do. And the goals are the specific ways that you will achieve that. The goals can change, but the purpose should not change.
This is Greta again. I just feel like the goals don't point to the purpose. If our purpose is only to be an advising council. So that's why I feel like it's important that we would change it, because I feel like sometimes there is frustration that NAC doesn't have any teeth. Like there's not a lot we can do. We don't have like the power that some of the other committees have, but that's why I feel like it's important to bring it to City Council so that they see, not just telling them what's going on with neighborhoods is important, but also on behalf of the city, we are supporting neighborhoods. And if that's not our purpose, then our goals don't point back to our purpose, because our goals are to support neighborhoods.
Mm-hmm.
Brenda, I see your hand raised. Please go ahead.
Let's try to, let me make sure I can understand Greta, where you're coming from. You are an advisory board. You're not a quasi-judicial board. So most of the boards and commissions for the city are advisory boards. They advise on the specific, areas that they cover. What I would suggest you do is maybe what you do is just expand what your purpose says. So it says the purpose of NAC is to advise City Council on neighborhoods within the city's planning and zoning jurisdiction, by education, by, you can add those, keep it broad, but that way it allows
that's
you
what
to
I'm
do.
asking for.
So that's not a problem. I mean, you can just make that update. We can get that on council's agenda, but you keep it broad, because if you put anything specific, then you're stuck to that. So I just want to make sure.
Exactly what I'm asking for.
Right. And when you were talking about teeth, I don't know that you're not going to be changed beyond the advisory board. So, but you do understand that.
Right.
Correct? Okay.
Yeah,
okay.
I understand that.
All right, cool.
Thank you.
Sharon, please go ahead.
Yeah, I've sat through three reports from NAC to council, and I think personally that they could have been more forceful and more specific and more hard hitting on those reports, and that's one of the reasons why I joined CAN. And I think we can have a stronger role in the community than we do. And I still feel that, and I support Greta's 100% in that. So I just want to reiterate that.
This is Anna. I think where I'm struggling right now is if we want to have a stronger role in the community, do we necessarily need to wordsmith our bylaws to do that, or do we just need to figure out ways with our current board members how to strategically outreach and do those things that, as long as they're not in conflict with what we have written down, we might be able to achieve those same goals.
Sorry, Anna, this is Greta. I'm not even trying to like strengthen our goals. I think our goals are fine, but I think if we don't change our purpose, our goals don't point back to the purpose. Because our goals are around supporting neighborhoods, but it doesn't say anywhere in our purpose that we're there to support neighborhoods. It says we're there to advise city council. So it's just a technicality, but I worked for a nonprofit my whole life, and you always want to do something that points back to the mission. And if the mission, if it doesn't point back to the mission, then you're getting off track. And so I think our purpose needs to clearly define the actions that we are doing. And I think the actions that we are doing is fine. I just don't think that they align with the purpose as it's written.
Joe, please go ahead.
Yeah, I think that the powers and duties identify all the things that you're talking about. They talk about developing a plan to strengthen neighborhood identity, resilience, facilitate communication between the neighborhoods and the offices, develop benchmarks, work on special projects. All of those things are in the bylaws under powers and duties. They're just Article 2, Section 2. I don't see the need to change, to take that, to go through all the trouble, because the bylaws are not meant to be changed casually, and it's taken a lot to get this far. It would take a lot more to go through city council to get a change in just changing the wording when all the stuff that you want is already there.
Wendy, I see your hand raised as well. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Anna. Yes, I have a question to the members that were working on the bylaws. Did they not think about the process of how the wording and the purpose was stated under this heading of duties? I'm sure that Joe can address that.
I heard nothing except Greta's comments about that, and I think I addressed that because I referred back to the founding documents. And the founding documents don't have additional wording like that.
Sharon, I see your hand as well. Please go ahead.
One, I think we should take a vote, but having worked on 3 ordinance changes, it can be complicated, but it also can be very simple, and everything gets updated. And I don't believe it is that complicated of a process. Having sat through ordinance changes, I've not done a bylaws change, but I'm assuming that the work I've done on the other is just the process, and you submit it, and then the council asks questions, and if they request changes or not, we answer the questions, and that's how my experience has been with it. But I think it's vote worthy if that's where we're headed.
This is Joe. Did you have your hand raised again as well?
Yes. Can we separate this issue from the other changes? And if there are no other changes, approve those and then pursue the change to the purpose in a separate motion?
That honestly, that makes sense to me. I would love to get something on the books where we have some updated bylaws, especially with Joe rotating off this or after this meeting, and effectively NAC no longer having a committee person as secretary, where now it's going to be staff secretary. So at least getting to an updated version, and then maybe discussing some of the tweaks to the specific purpose. So Joe, I'm okay with
Can
that.
I ask something?
Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, I can't raise my hand. I think as long as that doesn't push this off the table, I'm just worried that if we vote on this and there's one outstanding piece, that it's just going to get forgotten about. Joe, I see your point with the duties, you know, outlining the activities that we're doing, but it's similar. I mean, the duties need to point back to the purpose. So that's why I'm feeling so strongly about this.
Brenda, I see your hand raised. Please go ahead.
Bylaws are made by NAC, not by council. So if you approve everything, and with the caveat that you will review section 1 purpose, you're good to go. And then when you review it again, you give people 7 days to review it, and then you can vote on that portion so that you have time to wordsmith it to where everybody can get to would be fine. But these are your bylaws. The only thing that you would go to council for is to change the resolution, which is what Joe is referring to.
Okay. Can we put a time frame on it?
Sure. I mean, well,
I just don't want it to be like in a year, you know?
I mean, I'm looking now and I'm seeing as potentially, I don't know if it's unfinished business or maybe it would be new business, like reviewing the new updated bylaws at the next meeting. But, or is it really just a matter of making a motion? And I'm asking the larger group what you all think. Making a motion to adopt the amended bylaws as submitted in our meeting packet with the further amendment under section 1 purpose to read X, Y, and Z. If we do that today, then we're good to go. Correct, Brenda? We don't have to take anything to city council. We've made another minor modification to the bylaws to be, or under the purpose to be more all-encompassing per what Greta and Sharon have said.
This is Brenda. I'm sorry, I must have missed something. What are you doing to purpose? You cannot, what Joe is saying is that this comes directly from your resolution. In order for you to change that statement, your resolution has to change.
Okay.
So that's the part he's talking about. So it's not a problem. You can approve it with the caveat that this will be discussed again at the next meeting in July or August. And then you take it up again. You wordsmith it, like maybe Greta takes over. Greta wanted the job. Greta gets the job. And you
already got the text.
I know. But you wordsmith it and send it back out for everybody to review, and then you can discuss it again at next month's meeting. But the bylaws will change with all the changes except for the purpose, and then you will look at that in July. How about that?
Thank you. Thank you for
good.
helping us understand that process. So,
no problem.
Do we want to entertain a motion to reflect what Brenda just said?
Yes. Sharon Summerall. Yes.
All right, we have Sharon making a motion. Do we have a second?
I second
A
it.
second.
All right, we've got Peter seconding that motion. So what we're voting on now, and correct me if I'm wrong, Brenda, but I want to try to get this right for the record, is to make a motion to move forward with all of the amendments to the Neighborhood Advisory Committee for the City of Asheville bylaws as submitted by our NAC working group on June 28th, 2021, with the continuation of discussion regarding Section 1 purpose at our next NAC meeting. That is a mouthful, but there we go. Okay, so we will take a vote on that now. Anna Sexton, I'm going to go ahead and say aye. Joe Fiacola,
Aye.
Mike Wasmer,
Aye.
Greta Bush,
Aye.
Wendy Hayner,
Aye.
Peter Abzug,
Aye.
Sharon Summerall.
Aye.
All right, I think I have everyone. The motion carries, and I am glad to put a bow on it for this meeting, and we will revisit at next meeting and hopefully have some nice, shiny new bylaws. Thank you, everyone. Okay, moving on to the approval of our fiscal year 2022 work plan. That updated document was provided in your meeting packet. And Brenda, if you don't mind just going over some of the formatting differences that we're seeing compared to last meeting.
Okay.
Thanks.
So this is Brenda Mills, staff liaison. Joe submitted a draft work plan for you guys to look at that we did not include in the last meeting. So this first page is what Joe submitted, right? What is on the next page where it says below the work plan information presented at the May 24th, these are items that were not in the blue. These were items that were not on Joe's information. So what you're going to need to do is say what you want to add, subtract, whatever. So if you find what Joe submitted, that's great. And then if you want to add these items that were gone over in your retreat for the last 2 pages, then you can do that. Does that make sense? I don't hear you.
Say that again. I'm sorry.
Brenda, let me try to just sort of repeat back to you what you said. So what we're sort of intending to make a motion on today is to review the first page, this draft that Joe put together, and then if we want to add any information to that, we need to, or subtract, we need to make a note today. But on the Neighborhood Advisory Committee goals that Brenda put together in the last meeting, there is a bullet point in blue, and that's one of the differences between the 2 documents. Correct?
Correct. So all you're essentially doing is first page looks good. He put some other items down here for actions to consider, but the items you in specific talked about at the neighborhood advisory. Now, the ones I struck out were the ones you said to strike out. These other ones you need to decide if that needs to be in your work plan. If not, it's fine. If you do, I just wanted to make sure you had a written copy of what you had last time. That still makes sense?
Yes, thank you, Brenda. Joe, I see your hand raised. Please go ahead.
Yeah, what I submitted as a draft work plan was like a menu to choose from, and there were like 3 or 4 items on for each of the goals. It was not intended to be we must do every single one of these, but to consider monthly volunteer recognition and profiles and the festival as projects that we thought we had the resources within us to achieve in the next year and to plan out and put on a calendar. The other things on the bottom, develop benchmarks for each goal, that should be happening anyway. Revising NAC bylaws just happened, thankfully. But on the page that Brenda put out, like the 3rd page, the attending other meetings, that could come under the goal of submitting timely reports and recommend strategies. The to celebrate Neighborhood Hero Next Steps is already listed in there under, or it could go under the first goal, promote and celebrate neighborhoods. So I think that there's more work to be done on making this a document we can vote on. I would recommend a subcommittee get together and mesh these two together, come up with what you think you want to do, and vote on it at the next meeting, or present it at the next meeting. The work plan really goes into effect July 1st, but I think in the bylaws it says that it starts at our August meeting, which is really the end of August. So that would be the time that the work plan begins, and I think it deserves enough work that we shouldn't rush it and try and force it through today. So I would recommend tabling it with a subcommittee to work on coming up with a comprehensive proposal.
Okay, thanks, Joe. I'm gonna come back to that, but Brenda, I see your hand raised, so please go ahead.
If I'm not mistaken, and maybe I am, so you guys need to tell me, these items that I wrote out were the things you discussed at your retreat. Okay, Joe is correct. You can take some of these items and stick them up under where he has some goals and bullet points. But the last 2 pages is what you worked on as a committee. Not one person or 2 people or 3 people. They're what you worked on as a committee. Now, if you want me to go back and put stuff on the cat, I didn't want to do that because they were 2 separate reports. I did not want to do that because I wanted to be true to what Joe sent. And I don't remember if anybody reacted to it. So I'm sorry, Joe, if I don't remember that. And then the other was what you discussed in your retreat. I'm glad to go back and mesh that together and bring it back for your next meeting. But I think if you just take a quick look, we could just stick them under categories and then we'll send back a clean document. I don't think it needs another meeting. I don't. Now, if you feel that it does, totally, you can do that.
Sorry, go ahead, Sharon.
Well, the issue for me is always time and another subcommittee and more time. So, what Joe did is admirable, but I don't necessarily agree with all those bullet points just due to the time constraints. So I don't know how else to wade through this unless we do it at a next meeting and just go through. But to have a subcommittee, maybe there's other people here that want to sit on a subcommittee and file some of Joe's good ideas into what Brenda's done. Brenda's, for me, is more cogent because it's what we went through on our retreat. And the other are good ideas, but we've got to figure out, 1, if we got the time to add it, and 2, if we all are in agreement to putting it into our goals. And I don't know if a subcommittee alone can come up with that. I mean, does that make sense?
This is Anna. It does. I was a little unclear as to where the draft, the NAC work plan on the first page came from, but now it makes a lot more sense seeing after explanation. But I tend to agree that it might be possible for us to find homes for some of that information under the work plan on that we all developed as a group, more or less, during the retreat. And I tend to agree with Sharon as well that this is the way that I'm starting to understand and follow, what our goals are. I think they're categorized in a easy to understand way. I personally don't have, I'm concerned about another subcommittee or working group getting involved and continuing to work together where it'll just delay things even further, I think that this is work that we can do behind the scenes, where we're not communicating with each other directly, but sending things either to me or to Brenda, perhaps, to kind of button everything up and pull it together. Brenda, please go ahead.
So I have lots of strengths, but one weakness is I tend to oversimplify. So if I do that, y'all just call, BS on me. I literally just took the last 3 pages and they connect to something that Joe put on the first page. So I'm willing to go back, take that, put it all together, because it all fits. It's just, it was 2 different things. And I'm willing to put all that together. We will leave. You can wordsmith Joe's stuff. I think you should be sending emails separately, not as a group to vote, but just send it. I'll work on this. You'll get it by Wednesday. Take the 4th of July holiday to look at it, and then start sending in comments. And then if you want, you can vote on it in August. No more discussion, no committee.
I'm good with that. I mean, like I said, the draft that we got that you had organized and put together, Brenda, is clear and makes sense to me. This first page, when I looked at it, there were a few things that showed up that I didn't remember specifically discussing, and maybe we did, but I'm okay with what Brenda suggested. If everybody else is as well, then we will. So we're not making a motion today. We're just going back, not even going back to the drawing board, but just
Combining it all.
combining it all and refining what we have here, and getting it sent out next week. So that
And let me be clear, I'm not going to change what Joe wrote. I'm going to add the last 2 pages in. Okay, so they'll be in a different color from what you guys talked at the retreat, but all of that stuff fits into what Joe put together on that first page. Does that make sense? Okay, and then Joe has his hand up.
Go ahead, Joe.
Yeah, this is Joe. There are things that I put in there that reflect things that we've done in the past, like holding public meeting in 5 regions. That is something that takes a lot of work. It lasts. When we've done that in the past, we've done it over a 2-year period to get through all 5 of the regions. This was meant as a menu, a suggestion of potential ideas. And the other thing I wanted to say was that we don't have to wait till August to vote on it. You got a July meeting that you could vote on it.
Well, you know what I meant.
Yes.
The next meeting.
Right.
All right, so it sounds like we will go ahead and combine offline the material that we have here today, wait for that new document to come from Brenda, everybody review, and we will talk offline individually, not as a group, no reply all, so that we can move on. Everybody okay with that?
Yes.
Great.
Sounds good.
Thank you. So we will not be taking any action on that today, which leads us to move towards our next discussion item, which is board and committee vacancies for 2021. And just want to provide you all an update. So right now, NAC still needs to fill the vacancy left from Pastor Hardaway rotating off. He's representing zip codes 28803 and 28704. One thought and idea that I had, and I've spoken with the clerk's office, I've also spoken with Brenda and Bobette, was to move Bobette from an at-large position on NAC to a 28803 representation position on NAC. That's possible. That's something that Bobette is amenable to. And the thought behind that is having to only fill an at-large position rather than a very specific zip code position. Once we get applications, it just opens up our pool for selection. So I don't think that's something we need to take a vote on today, but did want to just run that by you all. And Sharon, I do see your hand, so please go ahead.
That's brilliant. Brilliant. Brilliant idea.
I can't take credit for it. It happens on multimodal, so that's where I got the inspiration for that.
That was brilliant.
So with that said, now the next step is that the clerk's office will present the request to the Boards and Commissions Committee in July. And then we can, as NAC, begin our search for an at-large member. And what I do want to remind folks of is that the next round of vacancy applications for boards and commissions is due on July 12th. And so just want to encourage you all and your networks to get the word out. And also for anyone listening in today, please share with your communities that the Neighborhood Advisory Committee is searching for applicants to fill an at-large position. So what that means is anybody who is a resident of the city of Asheville, it doesn't matter what your zip code is, we're looking to bring someone else on board. Any questions? Great. Okay, so we will move into our new business. And the first item under that is the Neighborhood Hero Working Group update. I did receive an email from the working group today that they have not met in person yet due to various scheduling conflicts and vacations. So I do believe that is happening next week, but I don't want to steal y'all's thunder. So if you have anything to add, please go ahead and do so.
Hey, Anna, this is Greta.
Go ahead.
That is correct.
Okay.
We're meeting next week on the 6th.
Okay, wonderful. Great. So let's see. We've got, it's 5:57 now. We've got about 25 minutes or so. Really looking forward to this next presentation. It's from City Staff Ben Woody, who is giving us an update on the noise ordinance amendment process. So Ben, are you here?
I am.
Great. Thank you for sitting through
Yeah.
our meeting up to this point. And thank you so much for agreeing to present to us today. So I will go ahead and turn it over to you.
Sure. And Brenda, just to check in real quick, do you want me to share any slides or just talk or
it's up to Neighborhood Advisory. Would you guys like to see his presentation from, he did it with the Coalition Asheville Neighborhoods. Is that the one?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not gonna do 29 slides for sure, but I can hit some highlights maybe.
Yeah, that'd be great. Go for it.
Yeah, I say we do have a copy of the presentation in our meeting materials, but I do think screen sharing and kind of hitting highlights would be helpful.
Okay, I will do that. Let me share my screen. So while I do that and try to do two things at once here. First of all, thanks everybody for having me tonight. I know actually a couple of folks, you're going to see yourself just for a second, but hang on. A couple of folks have seen this presentation multiple times. So for that, I apologize. And now, can everybody hear me okay and see the timeline slide?
This is Greta. I'm on the phone. I don't see it in the meeting materials. I was hoping to pull it up, but.
Greta, I put it on as a link. It's on a link.
Oh, it's a link. Got it. Okay.
Right.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. So I can't see you, but if you can hear me, I'm going to go ahead and work through this. I'm on a laptop, so I don't have my double screens. And if you need to ask me a question or stop me, somebody just let me know. Is that good?
We will do it.
Okay. Thank you, Brandon. So, yeah, so we've been, this DSD has been working on and I'm going to do this pretty quickly, then answer questions. We've been working on updating the noise ordinance for really more than 2 years now. Part of that was suspended due to COVID. So we did set the project aside actually for a pretty substantial amount of time because of the COVID pandemic, but we've picked that back up recently. And there is a draft ordinance. Actually, we released after much engagement, and we've worked really hard on the public engagement piece of this. We've worked really hard to try to work with not only resident groups like the Coalition of Asheville Neighborhoods or the Downtown Resident Group, but also business groups such as the Asheville Independent Restaurants and Asheville Music Professionals. So we've made a real effort to try to find a noise ordinance that works for Asheville, and that's for everybody in Asheville. That has surprisingly been very difficult at times, as you would expect. And where we're at now with this current process is we took a draft ordinance to the City Council Public Safety Committee on May 25th. They accepted that ordinance, made some revisions to decibel levels. I'll show you a slide on that just in a second. We went to City Council on June 22nd and provided an update. And I'm missing one line item to this timeline is we are scheduled July 27th, 2021 for City Council to consider the revised noise ordinance. So we're about a month, actually a little less than a month out from that meeting where they'll consider the ordinance. So I'm gonna move forward a little bit, and I'm sorry about these. This is the PDF presentation, so I'll just kind of scroll through the slides. But here are really the 8 top noise concerns that we're aware of. We actually feel really good about these being the top issues based on our engagement and data we've collected. Of course, not everybody agrees with the solutions or kind of the techniques we're going to try to address these issues with. But I generally think these tend to be the noise issues in Asheville. We've had a lot of meetings around public engagement. We've actually been to NAC previously. It's been a while, but we've been before you as well. One thing that I do think that's worth sharing that's probably important for neighborhoods to really understand, in the middle of all this, despite a pandemic and everything else that's been challenging, we also had the tragic death of George Floyd, which is actions in the aftermath of that. The city undertook what's called Reimagining Public Safety, and that's just a different kind of look overall at how the city provides public safety in different types of services. One of the recommendations from that program was to move enforcement of the noise ordinance primarily out of APD, the police department, and into development services. So in addition to updating the ordinance, we've kind of found ourselves really just building the program for how we enforce the noise ordinance. So that's been one thing that's become a really important part of this. And I'm not going to read this slide to you, but you can kind of see that the concept, the way we kind of look at this is more than just an ordinance, but a set of tools and really developing a program to try to address chronic noise in the community. And all these are important, but I'm going to scroll to some of the things that I think are of most interest in this brief time we have tonight. So two things or two components that make this, I think, easier for everybody to kind of digest and understand is how we regulate noise. So first, you have to know where the noise comes from. If you know where the noise comes from, you know what standard applies. If the noise originates in public space, which includes rights of ways, or originates in a residential district, so that would be residential noise to other residents, so think like apartment complexes, for example. In those cases, the responding city staff will apply what's called the noise disturbance standard. That is a more objective or subjective standard, but it does allow some flexibility and I think allows greater context in determining and responding to noise complaints. The other side of the coin is if the sound originates in a commercial district, so think anything zoned CBD, which is our downtown area, commercial or industrial, those noise producers are subject to a decibel standard. So that's a really objective standard that we can go measure and determine if there is a violation of the noise ordinance. So again, remember the noise that comes from public space or from a residential area is subject to the noise disturbance standard. I won't read the slide to you, but these are the 5 criteria the staff would apply to determine if a violation exists. So again, this allows some context. So is the noise, is a noise disturbance or is a noise complaint, is it related to a noisy neighbor that's upstairs, or is it related to somebody performing in public space? I think the noise disturbance standard allows staff to kind of assess those situations and try to respond appropriately. Not everything, a lot of residential to residential noise issues, I think, can be solved through education, conversation, and trying to get people to work together on the issue. A lot of times I find that residents don't even realize they're creating a noise problem for somebody else. The other side of this, and maybe we can pause here if there's any questions. This is the decibel standard. So these would be the decibel levels and times that would be subject or would apply to commercial sound producers. So that could be anything from an industrial operation to a performance center to even somebody's HVAC equipment. So there's a number of things that create noise in commercial settings. And you can see in black with the strike through, you see the original staff recommendations, the decibel levels that we had proposed. And in the blue, you can see the modifications from the Public Safety Council Committee. And what you see here is there's a decibel scheme that matches what exists in Wilmington. So the modifications made by the Public Safety Committee in blue are what you have in Wilmington, North Carolina. And just point of clarification on this, when staff goes to measure, and we've done a ton of measurements, we're probably over 100 individual measurements in Asheville now in terms of collecting data. When we measure these decibels are an average, so it's not a peak. If there's an event that's happening when the crowd cheers or something happens, the decibel level will peak for a few seconds. But these measurements, these decibel levels, are what's called LAEQs, and that's complicated, but it basically means it's just an averaging. So this would be the average decibel level over a minute or greater. These decibels are measured at the receiving property. So if one of your fellow neighbors called the city and made a complaint, and the noise was coming from a commercial entity, we would come to the residential property to take this measurement, or whatever property the complaint came from. What we've tried to tell commercial noise producers is the best thing they can do is if you can get these decibel levels, if you can meet these at your own property lines, then you don't have anything to worry about beyond your property lines. And just because everybody's kind of interested in this real quickly, you can see some decibel levels from other cities in surrounding areas. These are kind of, we benchmarked against more than actually 20 municipalities to try to establish the decibel levels. And these are just a few of the closer, I think, more active cities that have decibel levels, and everybody does it differently. Some measure the decibel level where the sound's produced. Those are the ones in red. Some measure the decibel levels where the sound is received. Those are the ones in blue. And again, as I mentioned earlier, we're matching right now Wilmington's decibel levels. Now I'm going to skip forward through a lot of things. Let me stop here real quickly. And what I'm trying to hit tonight for NAC really is just some of the things that I think are kind of left unsettled, or some of the parts of the ordinance that probably we weren't able to get total consensus on. Another concept in this ordinance is the idea of a sound exceedance permit. This really isn't uncommon. Most cities have some sort of way, whether it's a permit or a variance, that allows properties to, at times and under certain conditions, exceed the decibel levels. So a good example is maybe a business has an annual nonprofit fundraiser, or they have live music or other live performing events, or whatever it may be. At times, they will exceed the base decibel levels. So this is a permit that allows that to happen under certain conditions. There's tiers or different types of permits. And as you can see, basically the more events that a place has that exceed the decibels, the more standards they have to meet. Again, with the type 1 is basically just get a basic permit from the city. And that allows you to have 1 to 2 events at your property per year, all the way up to type 3, which is 9 or more events. And that's limited to actual performance centers, which are places that are permitted to have outdoor performing arts or music or whatever it may be. A couple of things I want to point out, I think, that are important to the Neighborhood Advisory Committee, probably on this slide in particular, is right now it's really easy to build performance centers. Again, these are places that are under zoning or permitted and allowed to have like outdoor events or amphitheater type situations. So I do think there's a need in Asheville, as part of this process, to evaluate our zoning ordinance to make sure that when we do have performance centers located in the city, they're located in areas and under conditions that make sense and are as compatible as possible with nearby residential areas. So I think that does need some work. And then the last thing is on this slide is when we do have places that are applying for these sound exceedance permits, there is a there is a notification requirement to that. So if you live nearby and there's going to be a loud event on a Saturday, you'll get some sort of advance notice. So as an adjoining property or nearby property, you can kind of prepare for that event and be aware of what's happening and have some details about it. So you may not like the noise, but at least folks won't be surprised by the presence of it. Since we're talking to an advisory board, I'll stop for a second. One of the things we're also recommending is that there be a noise advisory board to help kind of guide the implementation of this new ordinance and program. Again, I won't read this to you, but you can kind of see on the slide, it would be as proposed, a good mix of residents and different entities from the business side of things. And of course, we'd want to have a sound professional on that board as well. And much like your discussion earlier tonight, we're also trying to make sure that the duties and the purpose of the board is really clear and obvious to the folks that are on it and to the staff in the community that rely upon it. And I just take a second to pause here again for the Neighborhood Advisory Commission. A year ago, this would have been probably all APD except for construction. So the way that the noise ordinance is going to be enforced in the future looks very different. It doesn't mean that it'll be worse or anything like that, but it's just something to understand that as DSD takes on more of the enforcement around noise, the way that we'll be able to respond is probably more systematic and probably in a way that tries to address chronic noise when that exists. APD always will play a role, I believe, unless we have a whole bunch of staff one day in the future, but we do need APD to help manage kind of after hours. There's a lot of times when maybe it's just a isolated party somewhere in the neighborhood, and it really does just take a police officer to show up and say, hey, turn it down, and that oftentimes is effective. So I think there still is a role for APD in certain instances, and as their staffing allows, that they're going to support this process. I'm going to skip through the examples, almost done, and I'll take some questions or listen to some conversation. We tried really hard to build a consensus. We really did, and a lot of different residents and businesses participated in this process. In good faith, everybody came to the table, but sometimes you just have to agree to disagree on certain things. And so these are some of the areas, and that's not to say that everybody agrees on everything, but these are probably the areas that I really would identify as just not getting, we just weren't able to get where I was hoping we could. But a lot of discussion over what decibel level should be, a lot of discussion over when nighttime should occur, because remember the importance is it's not literally nighttime, but it's the hour at which decibel level is lower. So the original draft had that as 10. That's now at 11 and 12 on weekends. And then, of course, this whole concept of sound exceedance, or like allowing venues to exceed the decibel levels. I do want to take 1 second. I think this is important to note to the Neighborhood Advisory Commission. One thing that for the most part, I think even the business participants have agreed on is the idea that there probably needs to be some type of protection specific to residential. With where the decibel levels are at now, I think they've been raised. They're a little bit higher in the draft ordinance, and we're going to have to get some data as staff to support this. We are going to recommend some sort of establishment of a decibel level specific for residential. So what that would mean is, while the decibel levels are perhaps a little bit higher for commercial sound producers or industrial sound producers, we want to make sure that when we're actually in residential areas measuring those decibel levels, that we have a number that is reasonable for the business, but also provides some protections for the residents that are in close proximity to that sound. So again, July 27th, we'll be in front of City Council. They'll consider the noise ordinance. One thing that has been agreed upon is once the ordinance is in place, it'll have a delayed effective date. So realistically, the ordinance won't be in full effect until probably December or January later this year. During that kind of transition time, DSD will continue to go out and get measurements and collect data to make sure we got this ordinance right. We're going to ask City Council to go ahead and make those appointments to the advisory board so we can kind of keep a group of engaged residents and business owners involved in this, because again, we're trying to do this the right way. And our commitment to city council and to the community is that if any of these decibel levels or if any of these standards are really just not feasible or not going to do what we had hoped they would, we are going to commit to bringing that back to council later this year and asking for modifications. So with that, I'm going to give my screen back to you and take any comments or questions you may have. I know that's a lot of information, and you only got like 10 of the 29 slides. So
This is Anna. Thank you, Ben. I think you presented everything in a really succinct way. I know it's a ton of information. I do see a couple of hands up. So Sharon, please go ahead.
Hey, Ben, this is like my third hearing of this, and certain things are sticking in now. Don't we have a noise advisory board now? Isn't that what that is, or has that got a different name to it?
it has a different name. It's a noise appeals board, and it's actually a quasi-judicial board. And really, their only function is to either hear appeals of a citation issued by the city, or to hear complaints that are initiated by residents. So they don't really do any advisory work. They only hear cases, basically, noise complaint cases.
And that'll continue then as well?
No, we're recommending the quasi-judicial piece go away. No, it won't, Sharon. We think actually that with a little more proactive enforcement by staff, we can probably be more responsive than that board was able to do. Now, if I issue you a citation, Sharon, you'll certainly still be able to appeal that. It would just it actually goes to the DSD director, so I wouldn't be issuing you the citation. But no, we're proposing that board, rather than be a board that hears cases, we're proposing that it be actually an advisory board that kind of oversees the program, evaluates the data and effectiveness of what we're doing.
And then fines would be issued through, like they are done now?
Fines will be issued through staff. I will tell you that in probably pouring through, I guess it's like really 14,000 noise complaints, I would say the city's issued less than 100 civil citations. And that includes the board. So I do think that we will probably, when we can't solve the problem, we want compliance. But I think you'll see a lot more reliance on the fines as an enforcement tool moving forward under this new program. We've already, actually, as DSD, I'll tell you, we've already issued fines in the current ordinance. So,
well, that's a good start. Yeah, thank you.
Yes.
In my world, it's a good start.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
Wendy, I see your hand next. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Anna. I'm Wendy Hayner, and I have a question. When business has this noise ordinance certificate, or is there something that they can post outside of their business stating that they meet the requirements by the city for their noise, that they are music venue or whatever the issue is? If it would be possible, if they have a poster of some sort or document that they would put in their window to inform the people who are visiting that area that they do meet that requirement. Is that a possibility, Ben?
It is. There's a lot of ways to do that. There's posters. There's ways to share information electronically now. I actually think education is a big piece of this. In our experience, a lot of times businesses don't even know that they've got an issue. So sometimes I think just through education and sharing information, most of our businesses are good neighbors and they correct. Some don't. But no, I think tools like that, resources, not only for businesses, but I actually think a lot about like apartment complexes, and you don't always think about your neighbors above and below you, or that some apartment complexes don't have air conditioning, so they have to leave their windows open in the summer. While you're in the courtyard, you just may not always think about the fact that people are sleeping with windows open. So I think what you just said is a great tool and something that we'll definitely do that the city hasn't done in the past, and that's share resources and try to educate people.
The only reason why I bring this up, Ben, is there was a situation that arose recently at a restaurant that had some afternoon music on the outside of their building, and a person who apparently lives in that particular neighborhood drove up and blew their horn the entire time that the band was playing.
I heard about that.
You did. So
I did in West Asheville.
yeah. No, it was in North Asheville.
Okay, well, I heard about that in Northwest Asheville too then. So
And what I would like to see is some kind of document that they would have in their window to bring to the attention of the person who's driving the car to say, you need to come and
yeah, I
read,
see.
so that you know that they are in compliant.
Yeah, I see your point. And that's a good point too. It's kind of a two-way street is if we do have businesses that do the right thing and follow the rules, and yeah, they shouldn't be subject to
Well,
harassment in the form of
the horn
excessive
was louder
complaints.
than the music. So
Yeah, correct. That's part of I think that's our job as staff, and maybe something that's different than the city's done in the past. Sharon, we're going to try hard to make people accountable, but at the same time, to your point, Wendy, when people are being accountable, we have to go back to the residents or whoever's complaining and say like they're okay, like they're doing what they're supposed to be doing, and we're going to try to do that as well.
thank you, Ben. I appreciate it for your
Good comment.
consideration.
Joe, I also see your hand up. Please go ahead.
Yeah, this is Joe Fiacola. I realize you're going to have to define day and night, but you're also going to have to define residential and non-residential with all the mixed-use development that has residential mixed in with commercial. If you move in above a bowling alley, you can't expect, if your apartment is there, you can't expect it to be quiet or that new rules are going to apply at that point, right?
That's correct. And that may be something that it probably does need more work. Right now, we've defined the land uses by their base zoning districts, but as you know, a lot of residents live in mixed-use situations, which basically at that point, if you live in a commercial, if you're mixed use in a commercial district, you're gonna probably be, you're gonna have higher decibel levels. Basically, I mean, you're not gonna have the same protections that somebody does in a residentially zoned district. But we don't have a really specific distinction, right, as of yet for specifically for mixed use living scenarios. And maybe we do. Maybe that's something that needs additional work.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
I have a quick question. This is Greta, since I can't raise my hand.
You go ahead, Greta.
Is it okay? Sorry. Hi, Ben. I just have a
Hey.
question about the enforcement roles. I'm looking at the slide 25 where everything's labeled, and then I see in the notes it says APD's goal is eventually to transition entirely to development services. So my question is, when you have noise in a residential neighborhood after APD is no longer responding, who's going to respond after hours? Because people are not going to want to have to file a complaint form online. They want the music to stop or whatever the noise is.
Yeah, that's a really good question. And 90% of noise complaints happening outside of DSD's normal operating hours. So we're only like on the clock for 10% of those complaints, to your point. Until we can add more staffing, I think APD has to play a role in this, because I do agree with you. There's a lot of noise issues that are pretty easily solved with somebody showing up at 1 a.m. and just saying stop it. And it'll probably, and APD does, I mean, it's going to be a while before we get APD out of this totally. Let me say it that way. We'd have to be staffed.
Okay.
And I agree with you. Like some noise can, like, if a trash truck empties a dumpster at 3 a.m, that could probably wait till the next day. We could probably take that complaint over online and call the waste company. So there are situations where noise isn't like an in the moment emergency, but I do agree with you. When your neighbor's having a party till 3 a.m, it really helps to have somebody to respond. And until we can hire enough positions to do that, I think APD plays a role.
Okay. That's reassuring. Thank you.
Yeah.
This is Anna Sexton. And I don't see any other questions, and I know that we need to stay on track for our meeting schedule. But Ben, thank you again for coming and presenting to us. Is there anything else that you need from NAC moving forward, or are we really just at the point of presenting everything to council and then getting changes adopted.
I think we're at the kind of at the point of getting this in front of council. I will say that noise is a quality of life issue. Residents are typically most interested in quality of life issues. So I would just say NAC, with you have in a lot of ways a lot better access to Asheville than we do as staff. So I would say over the next 4 to 5 months, as we figure out this noise ordinance and try to make it work, if there's issues that you're hearing, like please have me back and help me understand those. And if we totally mess it up, tell me. But if we got it right, tell us too. So you take the.
Yeah, the good news often gets pushed to the side, or works gets pushed to the side. But just want to say thank you again.
Yeah.
I know that 2 years ago, when we were still doing in-person meetings and having community, essentially roundtables, working with you on this. So I know that you have really put in your due diligence and good faith to reach all different stakeholders. So we really appreciate it.
Thank you. And I, again, would appreciate the feedback loop with NAC. So I'm happy to come anytime.
Great. Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
Right, take care. Have a good night.
Thank you. Bye, everybody.
All right. So want to kind of squeeze in the last little bit of our agenda. We may run a few minutes over. I'll try not to do that. But now we have just our NAC member updates on other boards. We'll start with Open Space Task Force, which Sharon and I attend those meetings. Sharon wasn't at the last meeting, but Sharon, do you want to go ahead and kind of take the lead on this? I'm happy to fill in a little bit.
Because I missed it, the only thing that we've formed a subgroup dealing with Central Business District and the trees issue of the heat island effect of down on the CBD, and how to deal with the trees that are being planted that are not being taken care of. And if we're going to require trees to be planted, how would effectively make them mature and do what they're supposed to do, which be canopy tree to do their tree thing. And so we've had a subcommittee on what that's going to require. Again, we've had some discussion on trees take up space for developers, and it's real estate. So an open space with buffer areas, which include plants and shrubs and trees. My personal opinion, it's been a battle try to save our green infrastructure when the developers look at everything in cost per square foot. So that's all I know on it. You probably have more.
That's a good sort of general overview. I know in our meeting discussions, or task force discussions, we've been talking about maybe developing a tiered system based on the type of development or area in where development is wanting to take place, in terms of requiring the amount of open space based on that type of development. But there are concerns and unintended consequences about double counting aspects related to the tiered system, where it can actually sort of backfire, and the open space that you're wanting or intending to get can actually be lessened through some of the ways that we've been looking at trying to get a tiered system in place. So there's a lot of minutia and very complex work. And I'm thankful that Sharon is part of it, because a lot of it is over my head. I'm really just there oftentimes to support and take additional notes. But another question that came up at our last meeting is, do we want to allow commercial activity in open space? So thinking about shops or music venues or things like that. But we're having our next meeting on Wednesday morning. So I think we'll continue to work through some of those issues and have something to report back to you all. I think we're still a ways off from having amendments that everybody is good with moving forward on. Does that, Sharon?
Yeah, yeah. Thank you for paying attention and going to the last meeting. I will be at the Wednesday meeting. Hopefully, you'll have some time, if nothing else, just to listen in. It's taking two brains for sure to try to get this figured out. It's very complicated. So thank you.
Thank you. All right, we're at 6:30. I promise I'm gonna get through this next little bit. I attended the June Multimodal Transportation Commission meeting last week as the NAC liaison, and there's a lot of information that I do want to share with you all today. I'll gloss over some of it, but there are resources on the city website, or feel free to email me with other questions or comments you have. But we did receive essentially a project update on the Biltmore McDowell corridor study from VHB, who are the consultants that were hired to do that study. They essentially looked at three alternatives where you're shifting lane directions or doing what they're calling rebalances. So either rebalancing Biltmore, rebalancing McDowell, or doing a combination of those two. And each comes with pros and cons, but their final report will present a menu of options to the city where some recommendations or improvements can be standalone items, and others are expected to be implemented as a result of whichever alternative they ultimately select. But their information is on the city website under the corridor studies page and links. So you can actually read in much greater detail than what I just shared with you, what that is looking like. We also got a presentation from Mike Sewell at Asheville on Bikes, presenting the West Wayne street tweaks projects. So this is round 2. Cox Avenue was the first go round down in South Slope, and this is the second project that they took on and implemented in partnership with AARP, Blue Ridge Bicycle Club, and the city. And this project was constructed a couple of Saturdays ago, but it resulted in a roundabout at the intersection of Waynesville Avenue and Westwood Place. Also 3 new crosswalks, sidewalk and curb extensions that are sort of delineated with temporary installments, and also converted Michigan into a one-way street for just a small segment of that roadway, and put in a sidewalk extension into the right-of-way. It's over in East-West Asheville. It's in the neighborhood I live in. I'm a big fan of it and really thankful for everyone who volunteered their hours, and thankful for Asheville on Bikes and the work that they do, and how receptive the city has been to working with them and making things happen. Merriman Avenue update. Since the last multimodal meeting, they've had at least one additional meeting with NCDOT to talk about planned resurfacing projects for Merriman Avenue. NCDOT is supportive of a general concept of wanting to have a 3-lane facility. So kind of, road diet where you're going to have improved bike and ped infrastructure, but also some traffic calming elements to slow down traffic. But the biggest issue is when and how. There has been a proposal to have the city take ownership of Merriman Avenue, but that is a whole nother can of worms that they're working through right now. So those talks continue. And then another big item is transit. The part of the update through, I think, this year's budget is increasing the frequency of the S3 and S6 buses from 90-minute to 45-minute frequency, which is a significant improvement, and extending hours of operation for the whole system, whole transit system, even later into the evening. And one of the good news pieces that they shared with us is the city partnered with Mayheck and Beloved last week for COVID vaccinations, and that resulted in vaccinating 71 people who received free bus passes for the rest of the year. So that was, I think, a really great and creative way to engage the community and offer public health initiatives. So also Amboy Road, which is over near Amboy and Lyman, where the new greenway and cycle track have been installed. There's a pretty short but significant gap in pedestrian infrastructure or pedestrian safety between the end of that and the Amboy River, the bridge over French Broad River. And so multimodal really kind of pushed the city to make a case to NCDOT about finding a way to implement even temporary safety improvements. So now there's about $300,000 of improvements underway for that section, where they're going to be widening the sidewalk on the north side to allow for bike ped infrastructure. And the city and NCDOT did counts and bicycle and pedestrian counts and saw a great need for some protection over there. So that's also really exciting, but I think that also just sort of ties back into NAC's liaising with multimodal. If there are things that you all see in your neighborhoods that you have questions about, or you want me to relay to multimodal, we have their ear, and the city is receptive. NCDOT, I think, is a little bit more receptive to multimodal safety than they have been in the past, hopefully. So just wanted to share that all with you. I know that's a lot of information. That does wrap up our updates on other boards and commissions. And so agenda items for next meeting or next couple of meetings, we're hoping to have Lucy Crown or another representative from the city to present to us the Close the Gap. Oh, go ahead, Brenda.
I am sorry to interrupt you, but I just wanted to let you know there are no live callers on the line.
Thank you. That's helpful to know since we're running over time. So Lucy Crown or some other person from the city, staff person from the city, to present on the Close the Gap project, which is the Greenway, ADA, and pedestrian master plan. Phil Lenowitz, the former NAC chair, has contacted me, and I met with him virtually a few weeks ago. He is now a volunteer with AARP, and wants to meet with NAC to see how we can coordinate and leverage each other to work towards common neighborhood goals. Technical Review Committee, which both Sharon and Brenda serve on. Looking forward to having someone come present to us so that we can all get a better understanding of development and how that works in the city. And then also an update from Brenda on the neighbor, or perhaps another staff person on the neighborhood grants program. So if anybody has any other ideas for future agenda items, please go ahead and raise your hand now. If they come to you later, just shoot me an email. And then don't see anything, so move to no live public comment. Oh, Joe, I see your hand. Go ahead.
Yeah, just a reminder that you want to put your work plan on a future agenda.
Thank you, Joe. And your hand raised also as a reminder to say thank you for your service on NAC and for being our sort of de facto historian and providing us context and background on why things are the way they are and how they got there. It's been incredibly useful, and we hope to see you signing into virtual meetings or maybe in person at future meetings once those are held in August. But just want to say thank you again for serving on NAC, and we'll miss having you around. So best wishes post NAC. And then our next regular meeting is scheduled for Monday, July 26, 2021 at 5 p.m. and it remains remote with live comment. And NAC will begin in-person meetings in August, and the public will still be able to leave voice and email comments for in-person meetings. So You can check out the city's engagement hub for more information and directions on how to participate. And with that said, I will now adjourn the meeting unless there are any objections. Oh, Wendy, I do see your hand. I'm sorry.
Thank you. I just wanted to say thank you to Brenda for getting Lucy Crown to come speak next month. I appreciate that.
All right, good deal. So we are now so adjourned. Thank you all and have a good night.